What's poppin'? Logan Murdoch here, Raja Bell there, Howard Beck in the cut.
Wagwan.
Motherfucking Mondays. We're going to talk a little Cavs, Magic, post-mortem. Then we're going to talk a little Knicks-Pacers. Then we're going to talk a lot about Anthony Edwards. Very excited about that. But first, let's talk a little Cavs, Magic, where the Cavs ended up winning the series. I believe it was 106-93. They ended up just putting the clamps on the Magic down the stretch. Donovan Mitchell and co are going to the second round in what seems to be the most anticlimactic series win of our young playoffs thus far. Because I don't even really want to talk about the Cavs. I want to talk about the Orlando Magic and where they are as a staff, record label, and mother effing crew. We saw the growth of one Paolo Banchero. I want to start with Raja. When you see a team, and I know they're kind of in your backyard in Orlando, a little bit up to I-95. When you see a team like this at this stage of their trajectory, I always ask you this around this time of the year. When you see a team at this stage of their trajectory, what is the most important thing that they need to figure out in this offseason? And what's the most important thing that you want to see from Paolo this offseason and going into next season?
Yeah, the most important thing is to continue to build, on the momentum and the success that you've seen early on, right? And that's from almost every perspective within the organization. So every individual player with their specific skill set, and their ability to continue to improve. From a coaching perspective, he did a fantastic job. But you want to continue to, maybe tinker around the areas where defensively you were really, really sound, but then offensively, at times it could get a little stale. So maybe there's some things that you could work on from a front office and a team building perspective. You want to find some pieces. I think they need a PG. There are things that they need that you want to bring into the fold and into the mix, all at the same time without stunting the growth of Paolo at all. And so, you want to continue to build. You don't want any complacency to creep in because you had a good showing in the playoffs and maybe nobody counted you in the mix this year. You want them to get the taste in their mouth for that level of success, for being in the postseason, and then want to be hungry enough to build on that.
And what have you seen from them, Howard, in this sense? Are they ahead of schedule? Are they right where they need to be? What did you see from the Orlando Magic this season that would give you optimism if you were in Orlando?
They're definitely ahead of schedule. And I just mean, obviously since they got Banchero, that's the span we need to talk about. As an organization, we could say they're perpetually behind schedule because they just spent years and years of just treading water, doing nothing particularly interesting or creative or ambitious. That's a different discussion. This group with Banchero and Wagner has a lot of promise. Obviously, they've got youth and upside, and they're ahead of schedule in that. I mean, did you guys have them as a top 5 team in the Eastern Conference before the season started? Because I sure didn't. Figured they'd be a play-in team maybe, and then a low playoff seed who'd get spanked in the first round, and here it was. They got to a game 7 against, a pretty solid Cavs team, not a great Cavs team, but, Donovan Mitchell's got more playoff experience than probably both of those rosters combined. And it was a good showing. Like there's nothing at all for the Magic to be hanging their heads about today. And Raja alluded to it. They need a point guard. They need some other stuff too. They need bench depth. They made their way this season by being a phenomenal defensive team, but they don't have a lot of offensive punch. And even Banchero as their main scorer is not the most highly efficient, 25 a game scorer in the league. So they could use a little better balance, and they definitely need a point guard. I don't know where that point guard's coming from, by the way, unless maybe it's the guy who just beat them. And I don't know what the Cavs are going to do this summer. I don't know if, we're perpetually talking about whether Donovan Mitchell's going to stay or go. And if he does stay, if he signs an extension, does that mean you maybe put Darius Garland in play? Because I don't know about you guys, I still don't think that backcourt is the greatest pairing in the world. I think it makes sense to go with one or the other. So, but outside of that, there's not a lot out there. Like it's like Tyus Jones maybe, or you're not I don't think they're going for a Russell Westbrook or a James Harden, or I'm trying to think of who else is free this summer. Like, they're not Spencer Dinwiddie. They don't fit what they're trying to accomplish or timeline. And so, but that's the challenge they have ahead of them. They need a point guard alone, I think would help get them to the next level.
How are teams gonna look at them next year, Raj? Because we've seen a recent example. I'm trying to fit apples and oranges here, but you've seen a recent example of a team catching the league by storm in the Sacramento Kings, where they catch them by surprise, and a lot of those wins, this season. I'm thinking about the Kings. I'm thinking about the Magic this season as well. A lot of those wins, come by surprise, and you're a lot of those wins come by you're playing harder than the opponent, and they're not expecting. They're expecting a night off, and you punch them in the face. It's not necessarily going to be like that next year. How does the Magic, how does their staff, how do their players adjust to the change in how they're going to be played next year?
Well, I mean, that's the answer to that is the secret to success, and so why some teams have it and figure it out, and why some teams don't. You go from being, a hunter to being a hunted, and not to marginalize anything that Orlando did this year, but you are correct in that teams that don't see you over and over again, like in the Eastern Conference or like Western Conference teams, might not be as tapped in to like what you're doing and the successes that you're having. So you might catch them. Not that they don't think you're good or anything like that, but they might not realize just how tough you guys are and how well you defend and what you can do to them offensively. And so they might not have been as locked in as you would be for any other top 4 or 5 team in their respective conference, if that makes sense, right? And that's not to take anything away from what Orlando did, but next year you're not going to have that luxury. Next year you go from being a team that, to Howard's points, ahead of schedule since Paolo, to a team that, everyone says, hey, look, here's the game plan. Here's what they do. Here's what we have to take away. I need everybody to like, hey, look at me. And coaches snapping their fingers like, hey, pay attention. This isn't some bullshit. Like, they'll come in here and beat you. And, that level of attention, when teams give you that, it just changes the dynamic just a little bit. But that's why it's important for them to take the approach, that I was trying to say, a couple minutes ago, which is like, we haven't done anything. So while the league is going to maybe change the way they see us and hunt us, we have to stay in hunter mode. We have to stay hungry. We can't think that we've arrived in any way, shape, or form. Well, we haven't really done anything. And so we've got to keep that hungry, humble, physical, beat you up mindset, and then continue to grow in the other areas that will help us get over the hump.
I want to go back to you, Raja, because throughout this series, I think the world has seen how good Paolo can be. Now, he had 38, 16 in a closeout game, albeit wasn't the best shooting from the floor in Game 7, but he's garnered a lot of comparisons to people with his size and his inability to shoot. And we'll talk about player comparisons in the next segment and why I don't necessarily love them. But he has been getting to a point about how good he is to where he is starting to get compared. Like, does he have the potential to be one of the all-time greats? Who knows? What have you seen from his game specifically that would suggest that he is at one day ready to get to the next level? And where do you see his game maturing as he matriculates?
Well, I mean, I think when he first came into the league, his body was already established in a way that was going to allow him to have an impact against other grown men. A lot of guys come into the league, especially in today's age of one and dones being as prevalent as they are. They come in and there's just work that has to be done from a physical standpoint before they can have the level of success, that they ultimately will in the NBA. He was already ready to go. Physically, obviously he was still growing, but like he was ready to take on the rigors of an NBA season. Skill set is good, needs to get more efficient for sure. But his mindset is what I look at in terms of like what you could potentially be, how you're wired up top. Do you shy away from the moment? Is it consistent? If things aren't going well, do you fold tent and we just chalk it up to like, this is this isn't going to be a great night for me. And that's quite frankly what makes people like not be able to be stars. Their consistency. Stars figure out when they are inefficient how to come up with the 29. I'm not shooting great. I still had 30. Like we got, because the team has to have it. And so from a mindset perspective, I think, he has a lot of good things going for him. And so in terms of overall growth, like any player, Howard had you have to find a way to be more consistent, shoot a higher percentage, be more efficient is probably the word that I'm looking for. And like any player, we want to continue to figure out how to make the others around us better. If we're going to be the best player on the floor, it's an all-encompassing job. So I've got to continue to get better in those regards too.
And the key to maximizing Paolo's trajectory is what the front office can do. And this leads me to my question from Howard. And my question would be, how much do you trust the Magic organizationally to put the right pieces around him? And that's not only on the team perspective, but that's also the front office perspective. Now, so far, you could say the Magic have done a decent job. They got Mosley as the coach. They, have rounded out the roster enough to, be able to have a team like this, a defensive-minded team. How much do you trust the front office as it stands right now to be able to build a team that can consistently compete at this level and higher?
So my perceptions of the Magic front office are kind of just colored by the fact that organization, whether it was at the ownership level or the front office level, just spent a long, long time hanging on to that Vucevic era, whatever you want to call that, where it was perpetually chasing the 8th seed. Their ceiling was low. And it just didn't feel like a very ambitious organization, right? It didn't feel like a team that really wanted to risk tearing it down or make a swing for the fences move. They just, this standing in place for way too long. But I don't want to judge them solely on that or talk about what they're doing next based on that, because it's one thing to hang on to like the outline of a semi-competent team versus now you've got a young team with great upside. This is a different situation. So I don't necessarily want to hold the recent past against them. But if they don't make a move this summer, guys, that's what I'm going to look at it and go like, maybe this is just what this organization is, a team that just kind of like meanders along and doesn't know when to hit the gas or when to slam on the brakes either. So like, this is a time to hit the gas. This is a time to like, could you go? We don't know what's going to happen in Atlanta with Trae Young and DeJounte Murray. Could you go get one of those guys? If they keep Trae Young, could you be in the DeJounte Murray sweepstakes? There's going to be a lot of teams that are probably going to chase both of those guys. But this is the time. You got a really nice young 1-2 punch and some great pieces. And Jalen Suggs had a breakout year as one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA. Jonathan Isaac finally stayed healthy long enough to show what he can do. But you need some more offensive punch and playmaking. And it would be nice to also just have a veteran at that spot, at the playmaking spot at point guard with this young team. So I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying, that there's an obvious answer here, but it's time. Hit the gas. That's what I want to see this summer.
Speaking of front offices, quickly before we go on to the next matchup, talking about the Cavs right now, who it seems to have the perpetual cloud of Donovan Mitchell, will he or won't he? And they're going to get up against a Celtics team that is more than formidable and will probably smash them based on what we've seen from both teams thus far. Where, if you're in the Cavs front office or you're a Cavs fan, I'll start with Howard and then get Raj's take on this. How do you go about this series knowing that this cloud is over you, right? And it's not like it's a LeBron James generational talent. It's Donovan Mitchell, who's a great scorer, but that can get you to a ceiling. But if he leaves, you're kind of still stuck in the perpetual middle. Like, what do you do? And how are you feeling going into this series and beyond if you're a Cavs fan or in the Cavs front office right now?
Well, start with the fact that they just won their first playoff series in a non-LeBron year for the first time since, I don't know, the early 90s. I don't like. I know the stats out there somewhere. I didn't look it up. I apologize. But like, this is the first time they've won a playoff series without LeBron in forever. That alone is something to celebrate and honor. And considering how deer in the headlights they looked a year ago when they lost to the Knicks in the first round, I thought this was a nice step forward for them, because it looked like there were moments in this series where they were going to let this thing get away from them. And I'm not sure it should have gone to 7 games in the first place, but, credit to them and credit to Donovan Mitchell in particular for, taking this thing and sealing it up. But they're going up against the best team in the league by regular season record, and a great defensive team that's got a lot of offensive punch. And I don't expect this to be a long series. I know they're missing Porzingis in Boston, but I think, I think in a week and a half or so, we may be having the conversation about what now, and all the speculation about Donovan Mitchell's future. It's premature perhaps to do that now, although we do premature speculation about guys' futures all the time. That's how this league works. But yeah, I think that's partially what is on the line right now, right? They're not expected to get out of this series. How big of a fight do they put up? How much faith does it inspire by the organization in the roster as constructed? And how much faith does it inspire in Donovan Mitchell in his future there and in the roster as constructed? Do they come out of this series, whenever it ends, feeling good enough about this group to keep it together? Or is this summer the first move to kind of like reshape a little bit? Because I think it's probably the latter.
Yeah. What do you think, Raj, if you're going into this series as a teammate and, all of the things that you saw from, your team, the Cavs, going into, playing against Orlando, barely getting out of it, having a tough game 6 where Donovan scores 50 and not the rest of the team basically doesn't show up. How are you going into this series against Boston? What are you thinking about? What are you feeling with this cloud hanging over the team and the franchise?
Yeah, well, I don't think as a player you're really aware of any kind of metaphorical cloud over. Like you're not paying attention to that. You're in the middle of a playoff run, and so, I mean, as I would be in any playoff scenario, I'm just digging into what I could control. And I think this is, probably life in general, but certainly dealing with athletes. Like you can only control what you control. So what's going to happen after the series and what type of taste is left in anyone's mouth from the outcome of the series, I don't like, that's all outside of my control. I could control this matchup I have, this game plan that I got for whatever my assignment is, and trying to execute that to the best of my ability. And so, small picture, we're looking to go in and try to catch Boston, who's been sitting there. And this is what I would be saying. Look, they've been sitting. Now, you could tell me they're rested, and that's fair. But with rest might come a little bit of rust. And so if there's any chance that these dudes are rusty, we've got to be ready to take advantage of that off the bat. Punch them in the mouth. First quarter, they don't know what hit them. And then we'll try to hang on for dear life after that. And that's if we can steal game 1. Boston isn't, can we be real for a second? Like Boston isn't above the occasional, oh shit, we had a playoff game tonight. Like they're not,
especially at home.
Real
for some
talk.
reason.
So that would be what I'm doing. But I can't concern myself with any kind of black cloud over the organization or what Donovan might do or what the franchise might do. Man, we got games to play. And if we get one, like that's always a playoff mentality. We just got to get one.
If you get one, they'll get the other one. If history is a guide. All right, man. Let's talk about something fun. Knicks-Pacers, which has the opportunity to be one of the all-time great ones between these two franchises. I'm very, very excited. It's funny because it's like the two darlings of the NBA are coming of this season are coming full tilt against each other. You have the Knicks, who, while undermanned, have been very impressive in the postseason thus far, and you have the Pacers, who beat an undermanned Bucks team and are looking at the Knicks like, hey, we could go ahead and we could do something here. Looks like there's a 7-game series on the horizon. Howard, you're in New York by way of Brooklyn. What is the energy there? What's the vibe check? And how are you feeling going into this series as we approach game 1?
I mean, Knicks fans. They're the second things started to break a certain way a few weeks ago. It was like path to the conference finals is there. If we get to the conference finals, there's a puncher's chance. We can do this. I've been hearing that from friends who are Knicks fans for weeks, if not months. But certainly the way the bracket was breaking. And look, I mean, that was a brutal series, Knicks-Sixers. And I think it's fair to say that thing could have gone either direction, and that if Joel Embiid were 100% instead of 70%, it maybe goes the other direction. Of course, if he's 100%, they're probably not the 7th seed, so it's a different thing anyway. And that's not to diminish anything about what the Knicks did. They had an incredible series, but this is going to be a different challenge. I think probably if you're a Knicks fan, you're feeling pretty good about the fact that your team has a lot more playoff experience. This is the second straight year they're in the semifinals, with Brunson as kind of their driving force. And he's even better today than he was a year ago at this time. The Knicks are just a better team now than they were a year ago, period. The personnel is just better. And I think they're probably looking at this and they've got home court advantage, obviously. So the vibe here is pretty damn confident. I think the Knicks and their fans, well, I don't want to speak for the Knicks, but certainly Knicks fans feel like there's a path to the conference finals right there. But I think the Pacers, though I did not expect to see them in the second round, to be honest, once Giannis and Dame are all banged up, yes. But like if you had asked us, any of us, a month or two ago, you'd have said, yeah, Pacers have had a night. It would have been like Orlando. Cool. Nice breakthrough season. First round and out. And then you come back next year and try to take the next step. That's what I would have expected. So, but now that the Pacers are here, though, I look at it and like the experience advantage is not that stark necessarily. They got Pascal Siakam, who's won a championship. Obviously now staring down OG Anunoby, his former Raptors teammate that he won a championship with. First time for Halliburton in the postseason, but like there are other guys, Nesmith has been in the playoffs. They've got, Turner's just a veteran. He's been around a long time. Like I don't feel like the Pacers are like a young team that's going to have that deer in headlights look. So I think it's going to be a pretty feisty series and definitely a clash of styles. Knicks were one of the slowest teams in the league in terms of pace in the regular season. The Pacers were one of the fastest. So we'll see how that pans out.
Roger, we always talk about teams that are ahead of schedule, and I think the Pacers are fit that mold, right? And a lot of people could say, hey, they got lucky because they got through the Milwaukee Bucks without Giannis and Dame for the most part, and just was a fractured group. The Knicks aren't a fractured group. What are the biggest things that you want to see from the Pacers going into this series as they're young, as they're trying to find their footing? What would be? I mean, obviously, a win would be a really impressive feat and something that they're striving for and is within reach. But what do you want to see from this Pacers team that would say, "Oh, this was a successful run at it"?
Well, I mean, I'd like to just see a consistent level of play. Siakam, Halliburton. There's been a little variance in the playoffs. I'd like to see a consistent level of play. Like if we don't win because the Knicks were ultimately better and out executed us down the stretch, and you guys were good the entire series, or we didn't get the McConnell bench support or whatever that looks like around the edges. If those are the reasons we're losing, I'm okay with that. I'd like to see consistency from the guys that I need to be consistent in this series from the Pacers, right? Obviously understanding where our bread is buttered as a team. Like we want to run. I think like 112 is probably a good number in this series, right? Like if we can get it and consistently keep it a few points above 112, if we're in the 115s to the 120s, like I think that exponentially increases our chances of beating the Knicks. So like, let's act like it. Let's have our legs under us and understand the mission, which is run, makes, run, misses, run. And so when you're asking me what would be successful, even if they don't win, like it would be those type of things that I was looking for. Now, I actually, it could be an interesting series, but I can make a case for why it won't be. I think the Knicks are going to punish them. I think the Knicks are going to physically punish them. Now, if they can't get their hands on, this is like a prize fight, right? Like with a puncher and a dude who's like a technician, like, you know, he wants to jab, keep moving throughout the rounds. Like if the Knicks can kind of get their hands on him and get him in a corner and just beat him up on the offensive glass and really take the wind out of their sails in terms of a team that wants to run because you're just beating them up. I think it could be a quick one, honestly. But you know, that's easier
like
said
4 or
than
5?
done. Yeah, but that's easier said than done, right? Because teams used to say that about our Suns teams. But you know, and in theory, like it just sounds easy, right? Like, well, yep, we're gonna beat them up, and they won't be able to get it out of the net and run. But there we go, we're running again. So, but I could see that if they can't control that glass, they're one of the worst rebounding teams in the league, and the Knicks are they just came out of a very physical series.
Yeah,
like that Philly series was a physical series. Knicks Pacers is traditionally a really physical series. Refs tend to like remember those and probably are going to let it be as such. Like none of that speaks to like the Pacers having a lot of success in it, but it'll be interesting to see.
Raja just alluded to the theater of these series historically, which is thank you, Raja. Led right into my next question for Howard. Double thumbs up for you, pal. Led right into my next question for Howard, which is, how is this going to play on a national scale? Because we're all in our nostalgic bag. We know the Reggie Miller, threes and the battles that they had in the early 90s. Like, how much do you expect us to have one of those types of series? Because when I hear Knicks-Pacers, I think of it's different because it's a bit more contrasting styles, right? Like in the 90s, they had the Pacers had the Davis brothers, right? They had a physical presence in a way that this Pacers team is a bit more finesse. But how do you see this playing out on a national level and getting into the national consciousness, Howard?
I don't know. I mean, it's funny because the nostalgia always creeps into these things, right? We're going to see a bazillion freaking highlights of especially the 90s, and we're going to be seeing the Reggie Miller, Spike Lee, Reggie giving the choke sign, Spike doing all his stuff. Like, we're going to see, get ready for it, folks. So people are going to be sick of it within days. But it's going to be there. I mean, the thing is, the last time the Knicks and Pacers met in the playoffs was actually 2013 when Roy Hibbert blocked Carmelo and sent them home. I think that was also a second round series. The only time that Carmelo got out of the first round during his time in New York. So that's the more recent one.
By the way, real quick, Turner, missed opportunity, guys. They got Reggie Miller on the Timberwolves Nuggets, which I understand, but geez, missed opportunity here. Come on, TNT.
I wonder what went into that. We'll wait for like the Brian Curtis or Richard Deitch or somebody to like weigh in, but like it is a little weird, right? You would have thought automatically, but no, it's I know Stan Van Gundy's here for Turner.
So it'll be Brian Anderson, Stan Van Gundy, and Chris Haynes. Hat tip to announcer skeds for that. But
there you go.
Come on, guys, give us what we want.
I mean, honestly, again, if we're talking about like people getting sick of the nostalgia, like that would get old really quickly if it's Reggie for the whole series. So it alternates. Besides, like ESPN will have the games in Indy, and Turner has the games in New York. So it wouldn't be. And
I understand you want your number one team, Turner, and for Anthony Edwards Jokic, which we'll get to in a second. But Jesus, come on, one game.
But that part'll be fun. There's a little bit of mileage you can get out of that. This kind of resparking of this rivalry, but it has nothing to do with the players who are playing now, obviously, and they're all going to be saying that all week too. They'll probably be like, that's all stuff all happened before I was born. I don't care. I do think it's going to be interesting to see the clash of styles here. Not only pace, but Raja alluded to it, the rebounding. The Knicks were the number one offensive rebounding team in the NBA and punish you with Hartenstein and Mitchell Robinson. The Pacers were one of the worst defensive rebounding teams in the league. And look, the Knicks don't win that first round series against the Sixers without all those second chances. And the Pacers are now going to have to deal with that same thing. One of the other things that I'm wondering about, though, too, like the Knicks, like it's amazing. They are now a testament to, if you want to push back against the load management era and say that actually, you know what? playing 36, 38, 40 minutes a night in the regular season gets you ready for all the minutes in the postseason, which is a case that Josh Hart made recently during that first round series. We're going to see, because minutes per game in the first round, Jalen Brunson averaged 44 minutes in that first round series. Hart averaged 46. OG Anunoby 42.
Damn.
Yeah. Jalen Brunson, by the way, also 29
Raja, how are your
goals.
knees feeling just hearing that? How are your knees just feeling just hearing 46 minutes a game?
You know what's interesting? Like I would subscribe to what Josh Hart was saying. Like I liked to play the minutes. I knew I could go the distance. It was what I was used to doing. I never wanted to come out of a game, and I always felt great after games until I didn't. Until the calf blew, right? And you never know when that's coming. So that's the scary part. But in the midst of it, I'm with Josh Hart. Like, well, let me hoop. Let me know what it's like to have to go the distance. You just can never predict when that odometer hits, that the mileage that causes the injury.
So the Knicks have had some time, guys, to like kind of recover, right? So like maybe that's not an issue on game one, but I do wonder, like, so now they've lost Bogdanovich. Their rotation was really just 7 guys anyway, maybe 8 if they play more Precious Achiuwa. Of that's the first 7 guys they've been playing a lot of, 4 of them are guards, and they're smaller guards, right? Like Brunson's 6'2". Where did I put all my measurements here? Brunson's 6'2", Hart is 6'4", obviously swings between guard and forward. DiVincenzo 6'4", McBride 6'2", Halliburton 6'5", Nembhard 6'5", Nesmith 6'5". And so there's a little bit of a size issue that I think is interesting, especially how small the Knicks rotation is overall with a lot of guys out. And then on top of it, again, like the load that Jalen Brunson has carried, 29 field goal attempts per game in the first round. That leads the NBA in playoff field goal attempts. Doncic is a distant second at 25.5 to Brunson's 29. I just wonder about if I'm not putting this up as like a critique. I'm just saying, if I'm going into this series with concerns on the Knicks side of it, I do wonder about some combination of fatigue, size, and just the sheer workload that Jalen Brunson's carrying without having Julius Randle there.
Well, yeah, that's an incredible. I mean, the field goal attempts is an incredible number, and most people just hear the field goal attempt and assume, it's a relatively, basic field goal attempt, which is like straight up and down catch and shoot. But he's working.
Yes.
Like, do you have a stat for who's dribbled the most in the damn NBA playoffs? Because I bet
I could look
he's
it up.
leading. Yeah, I bet he's leading the league. So the point would be the work, the output is pretty astronomical, and why I think it could be interesting, and it ties into what I said from the Pacers standpoint, is that's even more of a reason that we got to get up and go. If we're the Pacers, like, we got to go, whether we are making or missing, whatever this looks like, we have to trust that running these cats with their lack of depth and their high mileage for the guys that they're using, running them is going to prove like to be, it's going to bear fruit down the line. Those dividends we'll see later. So let's invest in it now, even if it doesn't show up in game one. But let's make sure that we control the tempo. And that's the word for the series. It's pace, right? Like, we got to, the pace. If the Pacers can get it moving, and New York can't counter and slow that thing down, it's going to be trouble. And conversely, if New York can figure out a way to walk it up and grind out possessions and really make them work, pummel them on the glass, which cuts out their running legs, like then it's going to be in the Knicks' favor.
Well, that's why I think with all the variants that both of you guys suggest, that's why I think that it's going to be a long series, right? Because we're talking about adjustments in game or in between games. And we have 2 really good coaches. Like, Rick Carlisle's an amazing coach, probably, could be Hall of Fame. And you got Tibbs, right? And there's going to be a chess match there. I do think this can go the distance, because even when I hear you guys talking to you about it even more, like, I hear what you're saying about the physicality, Raja, but I also hear what you're saying about the Howard, about the pace. And it's a big class of styles, also big classes of identities in terms of the cities that both teams play in. I think we're going to see a lot of fireworks in this series. I can't wait to see.
By the way, to Raj's point about dribbles, so in the playoffs, average dribbles per touch, Darius Garland is leading in the playoffs with 6.4, but Brunson's right there at 6.2. So he is dribbling a lot. Time of possession, Jalen Brunson's leading in the playoffs with 11 minutes per game with the ball in his hands, and the average seconds per touch. So how often he's got it on each possession is also leading the league at 6.3. So
that's a lot of work.
He's doing a lot of work. And it's not just that he's sitting there. He's not just like sitting there like dribbling by himself, by the way.
No,
obviously,
he's working.
It's a lot of a lot of movement, a lot of banging, a lot of footwork.
Can you put into perspective what that means in terms of like 6 dribbles a possession? Like, what is that? How hard is that? And like, if you're going to have the ball 11 minutes out of a 48-minute game when you're playing in the postseason, can you put in perspective, like for a novice like me and some of our audience, like what does that mean when you're for your body, for what you're doing throughout a game?
Well, I just say, I mean, it adds. I mean, you're always going to have to do something on the defensive end, right? There's a requirement that you have to, put out on that side of the ball just to be an adequate defender and to be a good team defensively. So that output's kind of baked into the game, right? Now some guys are going to have to guard a better player, and he's got to be more locked in and chase through more screens and stuff like that. Even though not everybody plays like that in the NBA now. But on the offensive end, there become like different roles that you play, and some are more taxing than others. So, my role was to run to the corner and be ready to shoot a 3. Like, that's not a really taxing thing. Go into your backyard or your local, LA Fitness and have someone just throw you the ball as you kind of stand around the perimeter and shoot it. Like, by itself, not the most taxing thing in the world. Now, have that same person throw you the ball and then make moves for 6 to 7 seconds like as fast as you can, trying to like shake a defender and then shoot the ball, and do that over the course of 40 some minutes. And it becomes a much more taxing physical activity than if you were just kind of running to a spot and spot shooting. So when that's your job, bring it up the court, right? Boom. Let me get it on the inbounds. NBA is going to give you light pressure. So I'm not really worrying about that, but it is my job, right? I'm bringing it up the court. Boom. Now I got to get off of it. Now I have to move a little bit, but everyone knows I'm getting it back to finish this possession. And that's where that 6 seconds of real work happens, not just against my defender in most cases, but in a lot of instances against a secondary defender. And I'm in the paint. Like, that shit will wear you out. And so the level of shape that
I'm tired just hearing that shit, bro. Yeah.
I will tell this story again, man. I will tell this story again. I lived as a auxiliary piece offensively in the NBA. It was a great living. I lived a dream. When I got to Charlotte, Larry Brown, we had Gerald Wallace, Raymond Felton, and I was coming from Phoenix. And Larry was used to he had a lot of stuff that he ran from Allen Iverson or for Allen Iverson that I could run. Not like I'm Allen Iverson, but I'll catch and shoot it, where Allen Iverson would ISO in it. So he ran a lot of that for me. And because we didn't have true number one offensive players, how I performed on those nights when it was going to be my offensive sets was going to dictate whether we won or lost the game. Those were some of the worst experiences of my life. It was so difficult. Physically, it was so difficult to hey, man, we know you missed the last 7, but we're running it again. And then emotionally, it was draining, right? Because let's be frank, if they lose and Jalen Brunson doesn't, we're blamed. It's a Jalen Brunson thing. No one's pointing the finger at Dante DiVincenzo. They're just, unless he makes some astronomical error down the stretch.
That's something the Knicks are going to have to figure out in the offseason, man. To get him some offensive help.
Yeah, gonna need some help.
They need some help. We'll see.
Let me just say this. This is the last thing I want to say,
go
because I always found this interesting. When you talk about the juxtaposition of styles and why you think it will go, the distance with this series, I can understand what you're saying. When we played as the Suns, I always said, people asked why there was so much success, and it had a lot to do with obviously the skill level and all of that. But I think it's a lot easier to entice people to play fast with you. It's an easy thing to do because most basketball players by nature want to play fast, because what do they want to do with the ball?
They want
to score the shit, right? So you can bait people into getting up and down the floor with you. The teams that we struggled with as a Suns team were teams that were very physical and didn't take that bait.
The Spurs, the Lakers before the 3-1. Yeah.
The Pistons, we're not running with us. They're like, we don't give a fuck what you do. We're not running.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to walk it up and we're going to make you guys have to
Y'all
guard.
like, we want to run. She's like, no.
Now, 90% of the league would do that with us, though. And so I think that the Knicks could be that 10% of the league that's going to look at the Pacers and at least in theory say, we're not running. Under any circumstances are we getting up and down and running with you guys. We're going to grind this out.
If you're the Knicks, where are you trying? Are you trying to get it to like the 190 range? You know, like, are you trying to like get like muddy this shit up and just set, like final score to like 101.95 ish? Is that where you're trying to get it to? I
said 112 is a good number, right? Mm-hmm. But that's a regular season number. So for the playoffs, like if I am at 105, the Knicks, if the Pacers are there, I feel like we win the game. Like if the Pacers are around anywhere in that 105, 104. I feel like we got a good chance to win the game. And if we don't, I'm going to tip my hat to the Pacers and say, you beat us playing our game. If they're upwards of like 115, 120 in the playoffs, I feel like I probably haven't achieved my mission as a Knicks team.
On that note, by the way, in the first round, first game, Pacers lose to the Bucks. Pacers scored 94 points. They win a game 125-108. They win 121-118. They win 126-113. So like every game that they won, they scored 120 or more. Mm-hmm. So like it's pretty clear. The pace was way down, even in the Pacers series, by their standards, because it's the playoffs and that's just what happens.
Right.
But there's no question. Yeah, they're going to want to push this as much as they can.
All right. Let's take a quick break. We're going to talk some Anthony Edwards. Okay, we are back. Nuggets-Timberwolves is tonight. We are coming on the heels of a fantastic Game 1 performance from one of our faves, Anthony Edwards, who scored 43 points, franchise record, and a career high in the postseason in Game 1, where the Timberwolves beat the Nuggets 106-99. One of those games where Timberwolves shot the lights out. And we kind of saw this. It was funny because I was talking to Sue Bird about a month ago, and we were talking about in regards to Caitlin Clark and finding when the game slows down for a player, right? And obviously we're talking about Caitlin Clark in the context of college basketball, but the times when that kind of happens for a player and what that does for a player, and you're kind of seeing that now with Anthony Edwards and how he's been playing, not only in Game 1 of this series, but in the postseason at large this season. But I think, as a media, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. And I want to discuss this with our esteemed panel. We are, and I know sometimes maybe I might be guilty of this, but he's getting, with each win, Anthony Edwards is getting the MJ comparisons in terms of like he's the next one up. And I think it's a bit irresponsible from all of us who are doing this at this stage right now. And I kind of want to have a conversation about that before it gets out of hand. I will say I want to throw it to Raja, but I want to say my personal opinion on it. I think that we get into a space where, we get so excited about a new guy coming on a block and dominating in this way that the only way that we give flowers is by anointing him alongside the other all-time greats. But I think we're missing the mark here with the Jordan comparisons, considering Anthony Edwards has only won, I think, one series so far. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think
that's right.
Yeah, one series as a player, and has yet to even take on the mantle of can he even get to the finals first? And I don't think that we've learned. Why I say it's irresponsible from a media standpoint is because I don't think we learned from the 90s when we anointed literally every single person of being the next Michael Jordan. When you hear this, Raja, what comes to your mind? I know what I think, but you've played against the man and actually watched him growing up. When you hear the Anthony Edwards in the same breath as MJ this early in his career, what comes to mind, and how do you feel when you hear that?
Yeah, well, it's definitely not. It's not fair to him or to MJ, quite frankly, at this point. But I have said that he has that look in his eye at times mentality that I can feel through the TV screen at times that is as close to MJ, and I say Kobe as well, as anybody I've seen. I don't know how to articulate it. It's a vibe that a hooper gives off when he sees something that he feels like he has to prove a point to. You can see it and you can feel it when you watch it. The shit gives you goosebumps. Like, I'm probably not doing it any justice as a podcast, like articulating that, because that's my job. But like, you can just see him lock in a way with like a kind of, there's a balance of joy. You could tell he's having fun doing it, but there's like a laser
with will,
focus and determination about what he's doing. Like, he wants to show you this, make no mistakes. If you had any questions about whether you could or not, leave them out here tonight. The answer is no. And he plays like that sometimes. And that's where I think that's the space that I think he reminds me of them in. Like, I'm not comparing his overall skill set or clearly a body of work as of yet to any of those dudes. Here's the other place where I think I would say he is, and you go back and listen, I said this months ago, he's the most athletic motherfucker on the planet right now.
Mm-hmm.
He does shit physically that no one can do. And that is also like MJ. Like, and so again, I ain't saying he's MJ, but those two things when I watch, I'm like, well, no matter what they do, they can't guard that. Like, he's just going to jump over you, or he's going to beat you to a spot and raise up in a way that you can't really contest that. And then the look he gets in his eyes. So, but yeah, man, it's always unfair to compare someone at this stage in their career to like MJ.
So if he beats Jokic, and as we're talking right now, it is Monday morning, the morning before Game 2. So don't hold anything too much against us. But I think this question will hold, and I want to give this to the panel. I'll start with Raja, and then I'll go to and then Howard can answer. If he beats Jokic, if Anthony Edwards beats Jokic playing like he does right now, is he the best player on the planet? Does he take that mantle?
No, I don't think he takes the mantle. I mean, I'm a body of work guy. I think he's in the conversation. I think next year he's going to be one of the favorites to step into that like conversation unequivocally, if he can have the level of success coming out of the gates that you think he should. But I wouldn't say he's the best player on the planet because he beats Jokic.
Logan's just trying to hit all my hot buttons at once.
Let's get it. I'll even hit your hot button even more, Howard, before I say it. I say yes.
Just say he's the GOAT, okay? Ask, is he the GOAT?
No, I'm not going to say he's the
greatest of all time.
No. I say he's the best player on the planet if he beats Jokic this time around. I do believe that. Because beating Jokic means he's on a fast track to going to the finals and taking this team to the finals. And as an individual player, I think if you beat the best, you are the best. And I think he has a chance of doing that the way he's playing thus far.
All right, this ain't boxing. All right, you beat the guy with the belt, and then you take his fucking belt and you put it on, and you go, now it's my belt. Like, I think that's how boxing works. I'm not a boxing guy.
We got Howard in his bag, bro. We got Howard in his bag.
Come on, man. The thing is, like, we did this. I don't know how many years running, starting like 10 years ago. Hey guys, is Giannis now the best player in the NBA instead of LeBron? Is Steph now the best player in the NBA?
Steph, yeah,
is Durant now the best player in the NBA? Is Kawhi Leonard now the best player in the NBA? We were doing this every fucking year while LeBron was still literally the best fucking player in the NBA. Every year. I mean, you guys know, like, I don't believe in voter fatigue with MVP, but people certainly have, like, who are we going to call the best fatigue? They were so eager to say that LeBron was done. And that wasn't even so much fatigue. It was like an understandable kind of LeBron, even though he is still an all NBA caliber player right now, you could start to see the erosion a little bit maybe 10 years ago, or just like little bits of slippage. And as soon as he slipped, or as soon as he got hurt, or as soon as his team was out too soon, it was, hey, maybe it's somebody else. And it wasn't. Almost none of those years, if you want to go back, do I think that LeBron was actually ceding that mythical title. So no, I don't think Anthony Edwards beats Jokic and suddenly becomes the best player on earth, especially when Jokic sometime this week, I think Wednesday, is probably getting his third MVP trophy in 4 seasons. So you have 3 MVPs in 4 seasons. You are the reigning greatest player on earth. I'm pretty comfortable with that. But Edwards, who...
I wish we had that like ceremony on a spaceship or some shit. Like, you're now the best player on the planet. No, you are for like a year. Hey, Adam Silver, make that happen. Make that part happen. We need to do it on like on a satellite or some shit every year.
Sponsored by State Farm. So Anthony Edwards will probably be on a lot of MVP ballots when we see the final results, right? Like, I don't think he's finishing in the top 5, but he'll probably have gotten a lot of mentions. But he wasn't in that conversation for best or for the MVP top of the ballot this year, right? It was Jokic versus Doncic versus Shea, a few Jalen Brunsons thrown in there, maybe some, I don't know who else might have gotten some first or seconds in there. We'll see soon. But Ant Edwards was kind of on the fringes of the conversation. It was more like he's going to be at 4th and 5th on a lot of ballots. And so, but this is just the beginning. Like, we don't have to rush into this either. Like, by a year or 2, 3 years from now, he might actually be the best in the NBA, and he might have won a couple of MVPs by then. Like, we don't have to rush into it. And it's the same thing with the Jordan conversation. And then Logan already knows, because like he and I discussed this about 6 weeks ago when I wrote about the whole Anthony Edwards, Michael Jordan thing. And I think you were out that week, Raja. But like, and people please go look up March 24th or whatever it was that I wrote this whole piece. But like,
read Howard Beck.
The idea of crowning somebody as the next, it's so tiresome. And as Raja said, so unfair. And I know Anthony Edwards, because he is wired the way he is, like he's enjoying it right now. And he's like, cool. Like, no, I'm not him. But if you guys want to make the comparison.
I mean, hey, it's kind of hard to just walk into a room, motherfuckers think you MJ. Like, it's kind of tight to just like, so if you're young.
Yeah. And here's the problem. Like, if you want to say he's Jordan-esque or certain things remind me of, that's a little bit different because I can see that, right? Similar size and same position, and the athleticism, the explosiveness, obviously the swagger, the dominance, although Jordan was much more dominant much sooner and throughout. So like, you have to sustain it. But it's also like, the problem becomes once you crown a guy this, and trust me, I lived through this, and like Raja, you did as a player, I lived through this as a reporter, covering Kobe for 7 years up close, covering the league at a time when it was like, oh, is Vince Carter the next Jordan? Is Jerry Stackhouse the next Jordan? Harold Miner, Tracy McGrady, Penny Hardaway, on and on and on, Grant Hill. It weighed on guys. It was hard. And maybe it won't be hard for Anthony Edwards. Maybe he's fine with it. But even Kobe, who everybody says came the closest to Jordan, really didn't like the whole conversation, even though kind of he invited it with some of the way he carried himself. But here's a paragraph from my story from 6 weeks ago. Because this is what Anthony Edwards is up against if people want to keep playing this game of trying to crown him prematurely. Michael Jordan won 10 scoring titles in his career, and the first was in his 3rd NBA season when he was 23, which is just slightly older than Anthony Edwards is now. Anthony Edwards turning 23 in August. The year that Jordan got his first scoring title, 37 points a game in an era with hand checking, defense, a whole different style of defense. The lane
Didn't he
was
win
more
Defensive
crowded.
Player of the Year that year too?
I think
same
that was
year
later.
in '87.
But also Jordan didn't have the benefit of the 3 because we weren't shooting threes like crazy back then. Like he could have, but like it wasn't part of the game. He made 12 3-pointers that entire season when he averaged 37, Jordan. He averaged 32 points over an 11 season span, almost entirely on 2s and free throws, while shooting 51% from the field. He was 6th in MVP voting as a rookie. And got 2 first place votes as a rookie. So, and then the last piece, by the time he finished year 4, Jordan, which is where Anthony Edwards is right now, Jordan already had 3 All-NBA selections, 2 of them first team, Defensive Player of the Year, and his first MVP award. Oh, and 2 slam dunk titles. So let's just not do this. Like, it's not fair to me to read all that and say, that's what Anthony Edwards has to live up to, but that's why I say don't make the comparison in the first place. Because if you do, well, that's the fucking standard you're now holding him to. And when he falls short, well, then what do we do? Oh, he was a disappointment. And then everybody turns on him for not meeting our projected expectations. Like, let's just stop. Yeah. We don't need to do this.
What a fucking mic drop from our guy Howard, man. What a
fucking terrible fucking question, Logan. Jesus Christ.
No, it's a good question because
by the way,
it's out there.
By the way, So Jordan, he averaged 37 a game in 87. The next year, when he did win Defensive Player of the Year, did that while averaging 35.
Yeah, that's
40 minutes a game.
That's just insane.
It's fucking crazy.
He was at an entirely other level, which is why he's the GOAT, right?
Jesus, dude.
I hope what kind of spurs these conversations on isn't a true comparison to the body of work, right? Like, to your point, it's ludicrous, man. What are we talking about right now? I hope
I could create a player on 2K right now that wouldn't be that good.
Yeah, no. Like, seriously, but I hope I really do. There's an essence to someone when you see them out there doing what they do that can remind you of someone. Yes. And I hope it's that more than the other one, which is...
I think it depends on who's talking, Raja. Yeah. I think some people are saying, he makes me feel the same way by watching him because of the things he does. But there are other people who are going right off the deep end and saying, this dude is like Jordan. Like,
It's like when they say like Drake is Michael Jackson. It's like, sit your ass down, relax, calm down. Jesus. I'm sorry, I'm feeling some type of way.
Hey, you've been going. Hey, listen, not for nothing. Drake has been taking some fucking strays on this podcast, bro.
Yes.
Yeah. Drake,
yeah, we're here.
Okay, we're here.
He has enough on his plate right now. He has enough on his plate to be responding to real ones, dog. You need to figure some of those other shit out. Drake. Anyways, keep it on wax, man. It's all good. All right, let's do it. All right, no Kerm here. Get better, dog. We have Third Eye Kai in the building to do our motherfucking mailbag. What is our Roger tried to give me shit because I wasn't on my shit, but I'm on my shit right now. So let's do it.
Yes, sir.
Kai, what is our first question?
What's good, y'all? We got this one's from Charlie. He's talking about Luka. He says, Luka has picked it up on the defensive end tremendously over the back half of the season. Still a little lax here and there, but you can see the improvement. At the time of this email, I'm watching Game 6. Luka still complains like he did when he first came into the league, and at times has lapses on both sides of the floor. What does Luka need to learn to get to that superstar level and win his first title?
All right, Chaz, Chuck, Charles,
Charlie,
Charlie, Chuckles.
Put some respect on our real ones' names. I'm not going to stand for this shit.
What does he need to learn? I mean, I think he's learning it. I think that the fact that you can see him and the naked eye can see more of an effort defensively is a step in the right direction. Like, that's an acknowledgement that, hey, I've got to do this better. I got to buy in a little bit more. And I don't think that the full buy-in comes overnight. Like, it's a progression like anything else. So I think you see it happening now in terms of him beefing with officials and that costing his team at times. Somebody's just got to have candid conversation with him about that, or they're going to have to start teeing him up, but in a way that stops and curbs that behavior. But I think you see it. I think you see him continuing to buy in, even if it's marginally at this point, in a way that's going to help them. And so, the hope is that he continues to do it.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add there on the complaining to referees thing, like, he is one of the biggest complainers in the league, and sometimes it's costing his team not by text, but just by he's at the wrong end of the court because he's too busy talking to refs instead of getting back. His defense has improved markedly over the course of the season. Like, I've got something I'm working on regarding Luka and the Mavs in general. And everybody I talk to, like, people are really impressed by how much he has committed himself to the defensive end. It's a huge reason. Like, we talk about the changes they made at midseason, the bringing Gafford, PJ Washington, whatever, Lively as a rookie being a net plus for them, Luka and Kyrie, all that stuff is true. But Luka actually taking responsibility on defense has been a big part of this. And when you're talking about, like, he's already one of the greatest players in the league by production and everything else, right? The stats are there. He's going to be finished top 3 MVP for sure. And everything else is just going to be like, it's like the same thing as what we talked about with Anthony Edwards. All right, well, What's it all amount to? Are you winning playoff series? Are you getting a chance to win championships? And with Luka, obviously he's been in the league, twice as long as Ant Edwards. So like the expectations get higher and people's patience gets lower. But I think he's doing the right things right now. Some of it's taken a while, but he's getting there.
I think the thing with Luka has just got to be consistency. And it's weird to say that considering he is so great even when he's not, it seems like he's not trying. But he has a little Shaq in him to where like, I think about the 1999-2000 season, Howard, me and him talk about this a lot, but like Shaq locked in and became the best defensive player on the planet for like, 2 months. And Luka has that in him where he's like, okay, I'm good. Maybe I don't have to get into shape to start the season sometimes, but I can work my way into shape, or I can be a good defender if I want to be. And, that's the curse of being so crazy talented, is sometimes you take the foot off the gas. And that's what makes LeBron so great, is that he was a guy that could bring it every night at his absolute peak. And that's something that Luka's going to have to, this can't be, okay, half a season, I'm just going to be great defensively. And, then I'll turn it off when it's in September. Like, it can't be that. And you see that sometimes in the way that he takes care of his body. He's always having these knick-knack injuries with the knee and the calf. He looks like he's 85 years old sometimes, even when he's scoring 40 in the postseason. I think about the last couple of games of the Clippers series. He's going to have to keep that consistency going. And that starts with every day committing yourself defensively, every day committing yourself to making sure your body is good and in tip-top shape, and not only when people criticize you on it. And so if he can maintain that consistency, he'll be good. He's going to be a Hall of Famer regardless, but that's the difference between the Shaq getting the 4 chips, that he got, under the circumstances he is, or the 7 or 8 titles he probably would have gotten if he would have been locked in every single day in his preparation and in his defensive prowess.
Great answer.
That's my TED Talk. Thank you, buddy.
Speaking of star players, we got another one this one's from Kevin. LeBron is clearly rewriting the script of what an NBA career can look like. And are we at a point where a player coach is the clear choice for Los Angeles? He said, most talented coaches you're going to bring in are going to be almost younger than him.
No.
Also,
LeBron, that's the funny thing about LeBron, is that he tries to he's that guy that tells you or tells his teammates and stuff what he would have did, or if I was a GM, hey man, we can do this. He tiptoes into trying to be the GM and tries to be the coach. But when you call him out and ask him to do it, he's like, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. He's not about that life. He wants to be on the higher plane and higher and just in the clouds with how tell people how smart he is. But if it came down to it, he just wants to play basketball. He ain't about that Bill Russell player coach life. Did I speak for everyone there?
No, yeah. Listen, Kev, damn it, Kev. No, LeBron. No, no.
Just no. It's fucking no.
Just no. I'll just add one other thing. Oh no, go ahead, Rush.
My bad. It's a basketball savant, but coaching and playing. That's just. I can't even believe there was a time when that was happening, man. The amount of hats that you're wearing, the what you've got to be worried about to try to accomplish either one of those things adequately is incredible. To think that you could do both simultaneously is beyond comprehension for me. And I just say this. It's not always a terrible thing to play great and you don't win and you get to say it's the coach's fault.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you coaching the fucking team and playing and you ain't winning, who the fuck are we firing now?
Mm-hmm.
And let me just point out, without going down this rabbit hole too far, whatever Darvin Ham's mistakes may have been or errors may have been, coaching wasn't the Lakers' problem this season. Wasn't the problem when they fired Frank Vogel either. I know I don't care who they hire as coach. because the problem is the roster. Period. They didn't have enough talent. And that's it. It's a flawed roster. Yep. You can keep firing the coach, but all roads still lead back to to Rob Pelinka. Fix the roster.
If your team with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, if all I hear after your season is we lost because we played Taurean Prince too much minutes, and that was the difference between a play-in and a championship, miss me with that bullshit. Just miss me with it. I don't want to hear it. That's stupid. Sorry. I'm sorry,
Kev.
Sorry, Kev. No, well, it has nothing to do with you, Kev. It has nothing to do with you, Kev. You asked the question, we answered it. What's the last question, Third Eye Kai? Sorry, Kai, because I know Laker. I know it's going to be a long summer.
It is. It's going to be a very long summer indeed. So we're already thinking about LeBron being the coach. It's a tough spot to be in.
Is he going to be the coach? Is he going to be there next year? Over here, like he's out here playing double dutch again.
My season ended. I'm not thinking about the NBA past this point right now. Hit me next training camp for the Lakers. Anyway, this one's from Dennis.
Yeah.
As for my question, now that the Lakers, Bucks, and Clippers have been eliminated in the first round, do you think that this is the final nail in the coffin to the overindulgent player empowerment era, and we can go back to letting players play and management manage? He says, I think that getting input from your top players on personnel decisions is important, but not to the point where you're letting them call the shots as evidenced by the teams I just mentioned.
What was his name again? Dennis. Anybody? You guys can go ahead if you'd like.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I do believe that at least the whole monoculture of the NBA, and I think that the tide is going to turn, because there are a lot of GMs out there, and there are a lot of people that hitch their wagon to these superstars with diminishing returns. And there are other GMs and people that were in the front office that aren't GMs yet that's seen that shit. And I think there's going to be a turn of the tide. Now, players are always going to have some level of power, but I mean, before this era, Michael Jordan complained all the fucking time, and he didn't get everything that he wanted. And he, you could go check the file. He even threatened. There was a couple times where he threatened to go to the New York Knicks. And, Reinsdorf and company told him to sit his ass down. And that's the greatest player of all time. And I do think that there's going to be a pendulum swing, because honestly, you can't team build doing that. I think there's there's a proof of concept now where it's hard to team build when your best player has you with one hand tied behind your back trying to roster build because he's saying he's going to be one out the door. One foot out the door. And, even LeBron doing it this season, and subtly, like, okay, LeBron, you're going into your 21st season. Okay. You're going to, the team went 44, like, was an average team with you on the roster, right? Like, I think that as we go on, you have these other teams that are a bit more invested. I think players that are a bit more invested, you talk about the Shays, the Ants, all these down the line, I think you're going to start to see more continuity with these players on teams.
Kai, what were the teams he mentioned?
The Lakers, the Clippers, and the Bucks. Yeah, Lakers, Clippers, Bucks.
Mm-hmm. I mean, listen, I don't even know that. So I wouldn't even call this is not even about player empowerment. In the case of the Bucks, like if player empowerment were as persuasive as we talk about it, Damian Lillard would have been in Miami. He ended up in Milwaukee just because he wanted out, and Milwaukee made the trade that Portland wanted, as opposed to whatever Miami could offer. So, I don't even know if that's the right example of it. The Lakers don't have a championship without LeBron going there as a free agent, and then Anthony Davis forcing his way there. And if those are both, matters of player empowerment. But then everything since the championship has just been the front office making bad roster moves and not doing enough to build up the supporting cast again. So I don't even know this is a player empowerment issue. Player empowerment's not going to go away because players now the best players make hundreds of millions of dollars and therefore have a lot of sway, and contracts are shorter than ever. So they can always play the trade me before I walk away card. So none of that changes. What has changed, and this is the case for the Suns in particular, is that because of the new CBA, it's just so hard to maneuver when you have 3 max deals. Even 2 max deals makes it really hard to maneuver. 3 max deals, as the Suns have, you're just absolutely locked up. And in the Suns' case too, they traded every asset they had to get those guys. So it will be harder than ever to have 3 max guys on a team. Challenging even to just have 2, but 3 is going to be like the Suns may be the last team to try squeezing 3 max players onto a roster for a long time. And of course they picked the wrong third guy besides. If you're going to have a third guy and he's making $50 million, it should not be Bradley Beal. It should be somebody who's younger, healthier, and better. But that's really
Howard hella funny, dog. Howard is hella funny, bro.
That's just
Me
just
and
the
Roger
facts.
be locked in because he'll surprise you with his shit.
That shit was
He'll
smooth.
come in and just bro, just a
Younger,
dagger like
healthier, and better.
I'm not trying to take shots at him, but that's just the facts. You need somebody younger, healthier, and better if you're going to pay him $50 million.
Speak on the Carfax, Howard. Go speak on the Carfax, Howard.
Carfax.
Talk your shit.
Anyway, in conclusion, don't try making super teams if the third guy's not actually a star anymore and makes too much money and is always hurt.
Yeah. What they said, but I would just say in terms of, I have no problem with players being empowered.
Just make better decisions.
It's a great thing. Yeah. I talk about this a lot, and I would just say that front offices running things by a star player to get their feel for it, and a little bit of input is prudent. But at the end of the day, I do think lines have to be drawn in terms of roles. And that's not just as it relates to the team on the court. That's within your organization as a whole. And keeping those lines clear and not blurring them is important. So while I might ask you your opinion on some of these targets out here, ultimately, I need you as the star to trust me as the GM, or whoever's making the decisions to do my job. And I think that's how teams work the best, right? Like this is collaborative. We have to be on the same page. Clearly we're working towards the same goal, but within the day-to-day, we both have different jobs to do. Do yours to the best of your ability. I'll do mine. And we trust that we both made the right decision here. And ultimately that gets us where we want to go. And that's important in organizations.
By the way, guys, breaking news: the Timberwolves say Rudy Gobert is now questionable for tonight because of personal reasons. So
glad we got that in. Well, we'll see what happens. That's pretty significant.
Hey, do you think? I mean, are we gonna get to a point where we're not handing out the max like we're handing it out? Like if it's that prohibitive now, like where I mean, some of these dudes, like even the mega stars in the NBA, they're not max player. Max player wins you a championship. Like
especially
no matter like are we at an age where people are like maybe Tom Brady in it? Like, look, man, I made a lot of money.
I'm gonna say this though. Never underestimate the stupidity of a front office, right? Like Bradley Beal was not a max player when they gave him the max, and yet they still gave him the max.
The last 2 times. Like, but it's also, but I would dial it back 1 degree there or 2, Logan. Like, it's not always like, it's not because front offices are foolish all the time. Some of those contracts are foolish. The Beal one for sure. A lot of it is just also though, like, you can't afford to, like, this guy's not a top 20 player, but he's our best player. And if he goes, the fans are going to revolt, or they're not going to buy tickets. We got to have someone's got to be the attraction. Like, there's sometimes just, I think, some market forces at work when they overpay guys. And once the max was invented in 98, 99 after that lockout, every player who's the best player on a roster, no matter, like Bryant Reeves got the max, right? Like everybody who was, he did. I'm sorry, Raj.
Big country. Let's get it.
Everybody who was the best player on their team, like I think like Keith Van Horn probably got the max. Like a lot of guys just because they were the best on their team.
You better stop, Howard. I'm sorry I asked a fucking question.
Calm your ass down,
sorry.
Howard. Calm the fuck down, Howard.
Not on the outro, bro. We ain't gonna do this on the way out. Man, you ain't gonna fuck my day up.
Hey, that's why we can't go over an hour on this thing, bro, because it gets a little wonky, a little wild. But it is your fault, Raja. This is your fucking fault.
I should have let it go.
All right, you know what? No more. We're done. That is another edition.
Shout out to Big Country and Keith Van Horn. I ain't got no beef.
Yeah. They got to the baggage claim. Raja, quit hating. Yeah. All right, let's go. That is another edition. That is another edition of motherfucking Mondays. This is the kind of comedy and hilarity and levity and all the evities you can get when you tap in for the motherfucking Monday mailbag. Every Monday's realonesmailbag@gmail.com, realonesmailbag@gmail.com, realonesmailbag@gmail.com. Getting a little loopy here. Shout out to Kerm. We'll see you, me and Ra, I think we'll see you guys on Friday. Tap in, all the shits. Bye.